Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Neon Chronicles episode 7. Either way, this is SL tonight, and we're just going to go ahead and jump into the next story here. Uh, Currently, we are reading from I Hope I Shall Arrive Soon, an anthology book. An anthology book of Philip K. Dick stories, 10 of them to be exact. We've already covered the first two. The first one being an essay. The first one was an essay that was intended to be read at the very first sci-fi convention, basically. Um, but he passed away before he was able to do so. And so ultimately, this ended up being put in posthumously into this book, which is I Hope I Shall Arrive Soon, which is also the name of one of the stories, the titular story, as it were. Um, but the story itself, the essay, is relevant in the sense that all of the stories inside the book co-align with the themes of that story. Um, that it's all consistent with how Philip K. Dick saw the world in a chaotic, uniform manner. In the sense that all of these stories coalesce to make you question what is reality and what it is to be human. The next story that came along that we read was The Life of Brown Oxford, where the individual inside the story was given a animator, quote unquote, by some strange doctor person, uh, and the animator brings things to life. In this case, a brown Oxford, a shoe. Uh, and the shoe, being as like an animal, proceeds to then use the animator to animate a female shoe, which inadvertently then leads to the two shoes having a mating dance in the front yard and then disappearing into the woods. And so now here we are on Explorer's Week. Now, as stated before, all the themes here are going to be around the idea of reality and what is it. Um, with in that first story, him pointing out that he had been asked the question, "What is reality?" Or "How do you know reality exists?" And his only answer to it was, "Reality is when you stop believing in it, it still exists." It's the only thing he can come up with. And I mean, for what it's worth, I hear nothing better. So here we are today, currently at my home place. Children's is losing their mind. We are reading Explorer's Week. Golly, Parkhurst gasped, his red face tingled with excitement. Come here, you guys, look. He crowded around the view screen. There she is, Barton said. His heart beat strangely. She sure looks good. Damn right she looks good, Leon agreed. He trembled. Say, can I? I can make it out New York. The hell you can. I can. The gray, by the water. That's not even the United States. We're looking at it upside down. That's Siam. The ship hurtled through space, meteoroid shields shrieking. Below it, the blue-green globe swelled. Clouds drifted along it, hiding the continents and oceans. I never expected to see her again, Meriwether said. I thought sure as hell we were stuck up there. His face twisted. Mars, that damn red waste, sun, flies, and ruins. Barton knows how to repair jets, Captain Stone said. You can thank him. You know what I'm going to do first thing I'm back? Parkhurst yelled. What? Go to Coney Island. Why? People. I want to see people again. Lots of them. Dumb, sweaty, noisy, ice cream, water, the ocean, beer bottles, milk cartons, paper napkins, and cows, Betty said, eyes shining. Long time, 6 months, I'll go with you. We'll sit on the beach and watch the cows. Wonder what kind of bathing suits they got now, Barton said. Maybe they don't wear any, Parkhurst cried. Hey, Merriweather shouted. I'm going to see my wife again. He was suddenly dazed. His voice sank to a whisper. My wife. I got a wife too, Stone said. He grinned, but I've been married a long time. Then he thought of Pat and Jean. A stabbing ache choked his windpipe. I bet they've grown. Grown? My kids, Stone said huskily. They looked at each other. 6 men, ragged, bearded, eyes bright and feverish. How long? Fitchy whispered. An hour, Stone said. We'll be down in an hour. Ship struck with a crash that threw them onto their faces. It leapt and bucked, brake jets screaming, tearing through rocks and soil, came to a rest, nose buried in a hillside. Silence. Parkhurst got unsteadily to his feet. He got hold of the safety rail, blood dripping down his face from a cut over his eye. We're down, he said. Barton stirred. He groaned, forcing himself up on his knees. Parkhurst helped him. Thanks. Are we? We're down. We're back. The jets were off. The roaring had ceased. There was only the faint trickle of wall fluids leaking out onto the ground. The ship was a mess. The hull was cracked in 3 places. It billowed, bent, and twisted. Papers and ruined instruments were strewn everywhere. Vetchi and Stone got slowly up. Everything all right? Stone muttered, feeling his arm. Give me a hand, Leon said. My damn ankle's twisted or something. They got him up. Merriweather was unconscious. They revived him and got him to his feet. We're down, Parkhurst repeated as if he couldn't believe it. This is Earth. We're back, alive. I hope the specimens are all right, Leon said. Hell with specimens, Veggie shouted excitedly. He worked the port bolts frantically, unscrewing the heavy hatch lock. Let's get out and walk around. Where are we? Martin asked Captain Stone. South of San Francisco, on the peninsula. San Francisco? Hey, we can ride the cable cars. Parkhurst helped Veggie unscrew the hatch. San Francisco. I was through Frisco once. They got a big park, Golden Gate Park. We can go to the fun house. Hatch opened, swinging wide. Talk ceased abruptly. The men peered out, blinking in the white-hot sunlight. A green field stretched down and away from them. Hills rose in the distance, sharp in the coastal air. Along the highway below, a few cars moved, tiny dots, the sun glinting on them, telephone poles. What's that sound? Stone said, listening intently. A train. It was coming along a distant track, black smoke pouring from the stack. A faint wind moved across the fields, stirring the grass. Over to the right lay a town, houses and trees, a theater marquee, a standard gas station, roadside stands, a motel. Think anybody saw us? Leon asked. Must have. Sure heard us, Parkhurst said. We made a noise like God's indigestion when we hit. Vetchi stepped out onto the field. He swayed wildly, arms outstretched. I'm falling, Stone laughed. You'll get used to it. We've been in space too long. Come on. He leapt down. Let's start walking. Towards the town. Parkhurst fell in beside him. Maybe they'll give us free eats. Hell, champagne. His chest swelled under his tattered uniform. Returning heroes, keys to the town, a parade, military band, floats with dames. Dames, Leon grunted. You're obsessed. Sure, Parkhurst strode across the field, the other trailing after him. Hurry up. Look, Stone said to Leon. Somebody over there watching us. Kids, Barton said. A bunch of kids. He laughed excitedly. Let's go say hello. They headed towards the kids, wading through the moist grass and the rich earth. Must be spring, Leon said. The air smells like spring. He took a deep breath and a grasp. Soon computed. It's April 9th. They hurried. The kids stood watching them, silent and unmoving. Hey, Parkhurst shouted. We're back. What town is this? Barton shouted. Kids stared at them, eyes wide. What's wrong? Lamb muttered. Our beards. We look pretty bad. Stone cupped his hands. Don't be scared. We're back from Mars. The rocket flight. 2 years ago, remember? A year ago last October? Kids stared, white-faced. Suddenly they turned and fled. They ran frantically towards the town. 6 men watched them go. What the hell? Parkhurst muttered, dazed. What's the matter? Our beards, Stone repeated uneasily. Something's wrong, Burton said shakily. He began to tremble. There's something terribly wrong. Can it? Leon snapped. It's our beards. He ripped a piece of his shirt savagely away. We're dirty, filthy tramps. Come on. He started after the children towards the town. Let's go. They probably got a special car on the way here. We'll meet them. Stone and Barton glanced at each other. They followed Leon slowly. The others fell in behind. Silent and uneasy, the six bearded men made their way across the field towards the town. A youth on a bicycle fled at their approach. Some railroad workers repairing the train track threw down their shovels and ran, yelling. Numbly, the six men watched them go. What is it? Parkhurst muttered. They crossed the track. The town lay on the other side. They entered a huge grove of eucalyptus trees. Burlingame, Leon said, reading a sign. They looked down a street. Hotels and cafes, parked cars, gas stations, dime stores, small suburban towns, shoppers on the sidewalks, cars moving slowly. They emerged from the trees. Across the street, a filling station attendant looked up and froze. After a moment, he dropped the hose he held and ran down the main street, shouting shrill warnings. Cars stopped. Drivers leapt out and ran. Men and women poured out the store, scattering wildly. They surged away, retreating in a frantic haste. In a moment, the street was deserted. Good God! Stone advanced, bewildered. What? He crossed onto the street. No one was in sight. The six men walked down Main Street, dazed and silent. Nothing stirred. Everyone had fled. A siren wailed, rising and falling. Down a side street, a car backed quickly away. In an upstairs window, Barton saw a pale, frightened face. Then the shade was jerked down. I don't understand, Vinci muttered. Have they gone nuts? Meriwether asked. Stone said nothing. His mind was blank, numb. He felt tired. He sat down on the curb and rested, getting his breath. The others stood around him. My ankle, Leon said. He leaned against the stop sign, lips twisted with pain. Hurts like hell. Captain, Burton said. What's the matter with him? I don't know, Stone said. He felt in his ragged pocket for a cigarette. Across the street was a deserted cafe. People had run out of it. Food was still on the counter. Hamburger was scorching on the skillet. Coffee was boiling in a glass pot on the burner. On the sidewalk lay groceries spilling out from bags dropped by terrorized shoppers. The motor of a deserted parked car purred to itself. Well, Leon said, what do we do? I don't know. We can't just. I don't know. Stone got to his feet. He walked over and entered the cafe. They watched him sit down at the counter. What's he doing? Vinci asked. I don't know. Parkhurst followed Stone into the cafe. What are you doing? I'm waiting to be served. Parkhurst plucked awkwardly at Stone's shoulder. Come on, Captain. There's nobody here. They all left. Stone said nothing. He sat at the counter, his face vacant, waiting passively to be served. Parkhurst went out back. What the hell has happened? He asked Barton. What's wrong with them all? The spotted dog came nosing around. It passed them, stiff alert, sniffing suspiciously. It trotted off down a side street. Faces, Barton said. Faces? They're watching us, up there. Barton gestured toward the building, hiding. Why? Why are they hiding from us? Suddenly Meriwether stiffened. Something's coming. They turned eagerly. Down the street, two black sedans turned the corner, heading towards them. Thank God, Leon muttered. He leaned against the wall of the building. Here they are. The two sedans pulled to a stop at the curb. The doors opened. Men spilled out, sorrowingly and silently, well dressed, ties and hats and long gray coats. I'm Scanlon, one said, FBI. An older man with iron gray hair. His voice was clipped and frigid. He studied the five of them intently. Where's the other? Captain Stone? In there. Burton pointed to the cafe. Get him out here. Barton went into the cafe. Captain, they're outside. Come on. Stone came along with him back to the curb. Who are they, Barton? He asked haltingly. Six, Scanlon said, nodding. He waved to his men. Okay, this is all. The FBI men moved in, crowding them back towards the brick wall of the brick front of the cafe. Wait, Barton cried thickly. His head spun. What's happening? What is it? Parkhurst demanded desperately. Tears rolled down his face, streaking his cheeks. Will you tell us, for God's sakes? The FBI men had weapons. They got them out. Benji backed away, his hands up. Please, he wailed. What have we done? What's happening? Sudden hope flickered in Leon's breast. They don't know who we are. They think we're commies. He addressed Scanlon. We're the Earth-Mars expedition. My name is Leon, remember? A year ago last October. We're back. We're back from Mars. His voice trailed off. The weapons were coming up. Nozzles, hoses, and tanks. We're back, Meriwether croaked. We're the Earth-Mars expedition. Come back. Scanlon's face was expressionless. That sounds fine, he said coldly. Only the ship crashed and blew up when it reached Mars. None of the crew survived. We know because we sent a robot scavenger team and brought back the corpses. 6 of them. The FBI men fired. Blazing napalm sprayed towards the 6 bearded figures. They retreated, and then the flames touched them. The FBI men saw the figures ignite, and then the sight was cut off. They could no longer see the six figures thrashing about, but they could hear them. It was not something they enjoyed hearing, but they remained, waiting and watching. Scanlan kicked at the charred fragments with his foot. Not easy to be sure, he said. Possibly only 5 here, but I didn't see any of them get away. They didn't have time. At the pressure of his foot, a section of ash broke away. It fell into particles that still steamed and bubbled. His companion Wilkes stared down. New at this, he could not quite believe what he'd just seen Napalm do. He said, maybe I'll go back to the car, he muttered, starting off away from Scanlan. It's not over positively, Scanlan said, and then he saw the younger man's face. Yes, he said, you go sit down. So I'm wondering if anybody's catching on what's happening here. Or is it just me? But, to be fair, I've read this book before. Anyway, people were beginning to filter out onto the sidewalks, peeping anxiously from doors and windows. They got him! A boy shouted excitedly. They got the outer space spies! Cameramen snapped pictures. Curious people appeared on all sides, faces pale, eyes popping. Gaping down in wonder at the indiscriminate mass of charred ash. His hands shaking, Wilkes crept back into the car and shut the door after him. The radio buzzed and he turned it off, not wanting to hear anything from it or say anything to it. At the doorway of the cafe, the gray-coated bureau men remained, confronting with Scanlan. Presently, a number of them started off at a trot around the side of the cafe and up the alley. Wilkes watched them go. What a nightmare, he thought. Coming over, Scanlan leaned down and put his head into the car. Feel better? Some. Presently, he asked, what's this? The 22nd time. Scanlan said 21st. Every couple of months, the same names, same men. I won't tell you that you'll. I won't tell you that you'll get used to it, but at least it won't surprise you. I don't see any difference between them and us, Wilkes said, speaking distinctly. It was like burning up 6 human beings. No, Scanlan said. He opened the car door and got into the back seat behind Wilkes. They only look like 6 human beings. That's the whole point. They want to. They intend to. You know that Barton, Stone, and Leon. I know, he said. Somebody or something that lives somewhere out there saw their ship go down, saw them die, and investigated before we got there, and got enough to go on, enough to give them what they needed. But, he gestured, isn't there anything else we can do with them? Scanlan said, we don't know enough about them. Only this sending in of invitations again and again, trying to sneak them past us. His face became rigid, despairing. Are they crazy? Maybe they're so different, no contact's possible. Do they think we're all named Leon and Merriweather and Parkhurst and Stone? That's the part that personally gets me down. Or maybe that's our chance. The fact that they don't understand we're individuals. Figure how much worse if sometime they made up a whatever it is, a spore or a seed. But not like one of those poor miserable 6 who died on Mars, something we wouldn't know was an imitation. They have to have a model, Wilkes said. One of the bureau men waved, and Scanlan scrambled out of the car. He came back in a moment to Wilkes. They say there's only 5, he said. One got away. They think they saw him. He's crippled and not moving fast. The rest of us are going after him. You stay here, keep your eyes open. He strode off up the alley with the other bureau men. Wilkes lit a cigarette and sat with his head resting on his arm. Mimicry. Everybody's terrified. But has anybody really tried to make contact? 2 policemen appeared, herding people back out of the way. Third Black Dodge, led with Bureau men, moved along the curb, stopped, and the men got out. One of the Bureau men, whom he did not recognize, approached the car. Don't you have your radio on? No, Wilkes said. He snapped it back on. If you see one, do you know how to kill it? Yes, he said. Beerman went on to join his group. If it was up to me, Wilkes asked himself, what would I do? Try to find out what they want. Anything that looks so human, behaves in such human way, must feel human. And if they, whatever they are, feel human, might they not become human in time? At the edge of the crowd of people, an individual shape detached itself and moved towards him. Uncertainly, the shape halted, shook its head, staggered, and caught itself, and then assumed a stance like that of people near it. Wilkes recognized it because he had been trained to over a period of months. It had gotten a hold of different clothes, a pair of slacks, a shirt, but it had buttoned the shirt wrong, and one of its feet was bare. Evidently, he did not understand the shoes, or he thought maybe it was too dazed and injured. As it approached him, Wilkes raised his pistol and took aim at its stomach. They taught him to fire there. He had fired on the practice range at chart after chart, right in the midsection, bisect it like a bug. On its face, the expression of suffering and bewilderment deepened as it saw him prepared to fire. It halted, facing him, making no move to escape. Now Wilkes realized that it had been severely burned. Probably it would not survive in any case. I have to, he said. It stared at him and then opened its mouth and started to say something. He fired. Before it could speak, it had died. Wilkes got out as it pinched over and laid beside the car. I did wrong, he thought to himself as he stood looking down at it. I shot it because I was afraid. I had to, even if it was wrong. It came here to infiltrate us, imitating us so we wouldn't recognize it. That's what we're told. We have to believe that they're plotting against us, are inhuman, and will never be more than that. Thank God, he thought, it's over. And then he remembered that it wasn't. It was a warm summer day, late in July. The ship landed with a roar, dug across the plowed field, tore across a fence, a shed, and finally came to rest in a gully. Silence. Parkhurst got shakily to his feet. He caught hold of the safety rail. His shoulder hurt. He shook his head, dazed. We're down, he said. His face rose with awe and excitement. We're down. Help me up, Captain Sim gasped. Barton gave him a hand. Leon sat wiping a trickle of blood from his neck. The interior of the ship was shambles. Most of the equipment was smashed and strewn about. Vichy made his way unsteadily to the hatch. With trembling fingers he began to unscrew the heavy bolts. Well, Barton said, we're back. I can hardly believe it, Meriwether murmured. The hatch came loose and they swung it quickly aside. Doesn't seem possible. Good old Earth. Hey, listen, Leon gasped as he clambered down to the ground. Somebody got the camera. That's ridiculous, Martin said, laughing. Get it, someone yelled. Yes, get it, Meriwether said, like we planned if we ever got back. Historic record for the school books. Then she rummaged around among the debris. It's sort of banged up, he said, held up the dented camera. Maybe it'll work anyhow, Parker said, panting with exertion as he followed Leon outside. How are we going to take all six of us? Somebody has to snap the shutter. I'll set it for time, Slim said, taking the camera and adjusting the knobs. Everybody line up. He pushed a button and joined the others. Six bearded, tattered men stood by their smashed ship as the camera ticked. They gazed across the green countryside, awed and bright, but suddenly silent. They glanced at each other, eyes bright. We're back, Slim cried. We're back. And that was Explorers We, from Philip K. Dick's anthology book. I hope I shall arrive soon. And hopefully you liked that. That was actually a really good story. Just the concept of, like I said, the concept of idea of what is reality, what is human, um, aliens that are creating mimicry of themselves, or they're creating clones basically of dead astronauts. That way they can send them back to Earth for what reason? You know, it's unknown. Doesn't even seem like they know. Um, and that's kind of the thing too. You know, like they actually think they're humans. And then the story ends with them just returning as if none of that had ever happened. But if you notice that things didn't exactly happen the same way, like, you know, you got a cut, you know, instead of a broken ankle, and you know, they're wanting to take pictures of the camera where they didn't want to do that the first time. So there is some subtle changes there. It's interesting. The book Second Variety, which got turned into the film Screamers. Yeah, Screamers. Pretty sure. Um, that focuses on machines recreating humans or mimicking humans. It's a pretty good story, all told. Um, but yeah, let's see what kind of time we have here. Do 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 do. Let's see. Let's see. Do, do, do. Let's see if I can do. Um. Oh hell, I do not know. What have I been running? Uh, Why is it nothing ever just opens? To open up this, to open up that, to open up this. Oh God. You can't even tell me how. Man, I still have no idea. Okay, well, it's been about a half an hour. I'm all bit dead here. Um, well, let's see. Well, what the hell? We'll go ahead and do the next story. The next story is Holy Quarrel. Sleep dissolved. He blinked as a dazzle of white artificial light hurt him. The light came from three rings which held a fixed location above the bed, midway to the ceiling. Sorry to wake you, Mr. Stafford. A man's voice came from beyond the light. You are Joseph Stafford, aren't you? Then, speaking to someone else, also unseen, the voice continued. Would be a damn shame to wake somebody else up, somebody who didn't deserve it. Stafford shot up and croaked. Who are you? The bed creaked, and one circle of light lowered. One of them had seated himself. We're looking for Joseph Stafford, a Tier 6, 450. Who's the, what do you call it? A computer GD class repairman, a companion assisted him. Yes, an expert, for example, on those new molten plasma data storage cans. You could fix one like that if it broke, couldn't you, Stafford? Sure he could, another voice said calmly. That's why he's rated as standby, he explained. That second vid phone line we cut did that. It kept him directly connected with his superiors. How long has it been since you got a call, repairman? The first voice inquired. Stafford did not answer. He fished beneath the pillow of the bed, groping for the sneak gun he generally kept there. Probably doesn't work for a long time, one of the visitors with flashlight said. Probably needs some money. Need any money, Stafford? Or what do you need? You enjoy fixing computers? I mean, you'd be a sapped into this line of work unless you liked it. With you on 24-hour standby like it is. Are you good? Can you fix anything, no matter how ridiculous and remote it is, that happens to our Genus B military planning programmer? Make us feel good? Say yes. I have to think, Stafford said thickly. He still searched for the gun, but he had lost it. He felt its absence. Or possibly before awakening him they had taken it. Tell you what, Stafford, the voice went on. Interrupting, another voice said, Mr. Stafford, listen. The far right nimbus of light also lowered. The man had bent over him. Get out of bed, okay? Get dressed, and we'll drive you to where we need a computer fix. And on the way, when you have plenty of time, you can decide how good you are. And then when we get there, you can have a quick look at the Genix B and see how long it'll take you. We really want it fixed up, the first man said plaintively. As it is, it's no good to us or anyone. The way it is now, data are piling up in mile-high mounds, and they're not being, what do you say, ingested. They just sit there, and GeneXP doesn't process them, so naturally it can't come up with any decision. So naturally, all the satellites are just flying along there like nothing happened. Getting slowly stiff from the bed, Stafford said, "What showed up first as symptom?" He wondered who they were, and he wondered which GeneXB they were talking about. As far as he knew, there existed only three in North America, only eight throughout Terra. Watching him get into his work smock, the invisible shapes behind the flashlights confirmed. At last one cleared his throat and said, "I understand that a take-up reel stopped spinning, so all the tape with all the data on it just kept spilling out onto the floor in a big heap. The tape tension on the take-up reels," Stafford began. "In this case, it failed to be automatic. You see, we jammed the reel so it wouldn't accept any more tape. Before that, we tried cutting the tape. But as I guess you know, it rethreads itself automatically. And we tried erasing the tape, but if an erase circuit comes on, it starts alarm going to Washington D.C. And we didn't want to get all those high-level people involved. But they, the computer designers, overlooked the take-up reel tension because that's such a simple clutch arrangement. It can't go wrong. Trying to button his collar, Stafford said, "In other words, there's data you don't want it to receive." He felt lucid now. At least he had more or less wakened up. What kind of data? He thought, this chill foreboding what he knew. This was coming in which would cause the big government-owned computer to declare a red alert. Of course, this crippling of GeneXB would have to occur before a hostile attack by the South African True Association manifests itself in real but minute individual symptoms, which a computer, with its vast intake of seemingly unrelated data, would take notice, and add together into a meaningful pattern. Stafford thought bitterly. How many times were we warned about this? That they would have to wipe out GeneXP prior to its successful deploying of the SAC retaliatory satellites and bombers. And this was that event. These men, undercover extensions in North America of SATA, had roused him to complete their job of making the computer inoperable. But data might already have been received, might already have been transferred to the receptor circuits for processing and analysis. They had started work too late, possibly by one day, possibly only a few seconds. At least some of the meaningful data had gotten onto the tapes, and so he had to be called in. They couldn't finish their job alone. The United States then would presently undergo a series of terror weapon satellites bursting above it, as meantime the network of defensive machinery waited for a command from the Cardinal computer. It waited in vain, since GeneXB knew of no trace harbingers of military assault, would still not ever really know until a direct hit on the national capital put an end to it and its emasculated faculties. No wonder they had jammed the take-up reel. "The war has begun," he said quietly to his four men with flashlights. Now that he'd turned on the visiting lamps, he could make them out. Ordinary men willing to assign tasks. These were not fanatics, but functionaries. They could have worked equally well for any government, perhaps even the near psychotic Chinese peoples. The war had already broken out, he guessed aloud, and it's essential that GXB not know, so it can neither defend nor strike back. You want to see it get only data which indicate we're at peace. He, and no doubt they, recalled how swiftly in the two previous interventions of honor, one against Israel, one against France, GXP had reacted. Not one trained professional observer had seen the signs or had seen to what the signs led anyhow. As with Joseph Stalin in 1941, the old tyrant had shown evidence that the Third Reich intended to attack the USSR, but he simply would not or could not believe, any more than the Reich had believed that France and Britain in 1939 would honor their pact with Poland. In a compact group, the men with flashlights led him from the bedroom of his Connaught into the outer hall and to the essay which led to the roof field. As they emerged, the air smelled of mud and dampness. He inhaled, shivered, and involuntarily gazed up at the sky. One star moved, landed light on a flapper, which now sat down a few feet from the five of them. As they sat within the flapper, rising swiftly from the roof and headed towards Utah to the west, one of the gray functionaries with sneak gun, flashlight, and briefcase said to Stafford, "Your theory is good, especially considering that we woke you out of a sound sleep. But," as the companion put in, "it's wrong. Show him the punch tape we hauled out." Opening his briefcase, the man near Stafford brought out a wad of plastic tape, handed it mutely to Stafford. Holding it up against the dome light of the flap, while Stafford made out the punches. binary system, evidently programming material for the Strategic Aerospace Command Units, which is computer directly controlled. He was about to push the panic button and give them an order. The man at the console of the flap said over his shoulder, "So all our military units linked to it. Can you read the command?" Stafford nodded and returned the tape. He could read it, yes. And the computer had formally notified SAC of a red alert. He'd gone so far as to move H-bomb carrying squadrons into scramble, and also was requesting that all ICBM missiles on their assorted pads be made ready for launch. And also, the man at the controls added, it was sending out a command to defensive satellites and missile complexes to deploy themselves in response to an imminent H-bomb attack. We blocked all this, however, as you are now able to see. None of this tape got onto the coax lines. After a pause, Stafford said huskily, "Then what data don't we want Genus B to receive?" He did not understand. "Feedback," said the man at the controls. "Obviously, he's the leader of this unit of the commandos. Without feedback, the computer does not possess any method of determining that there has been no counterattack by its military arm. In abeyance, it will have to assume the counterattack has taken place, but the enemy strike was at least partially successful." Stafford said, "But there is no enemy. Who's attacking us?" Silence. So what made Stafford's forehead stick with moisture? "Do you know what would cause the GXB to conclude that we're under attack? A million separate factors, all possible known data weighed, compared, analyzed, and then absolute gestalt. In this case, the gestalt of imminent attacking enemy. One thing would have raised the threshold. It was quantitative. A shelter building program in Asiatic Russia, unusual movements of cargo ships around Cuba, concentrations of rocket freight unloading in Red Canada. No one," the man who controls the flapple said placidly, "no nation or group of persons either on Terra or Luna or Dome Mars is attacking anybody. You can see why we've got to get you over there fast. You have to make absolutely certain that no orders emanate from Genix B to SAC. We want Genix B sealed off so it can't talk to anybody in position of authority and it can't hear anybody besides us. What do we do after that, we will worry about then, but the evil of the day." "You assert that, in spite of everything available to it, GXB can't distinguish an attack on us," Stafford demanded, "with its manifold data collecting sweepers." He thought of something then that terrified him in kind of a hopeless retrospective way. What about our attack on France in '82 and then on Little Israel in '89? No one was attacking us then either, the man nearest Stafford said as he retrieved the tape and again placed it within his briefcase. His voice, somber and morose, was the only sound. No one else stirred or spoke. Same then as now. Only time a group of us stopped GXP before it could commit us. We prayed, we aborted a pointless, needless war. "Who are you?" Stafford asked. "What is your status in the federal government, and what's your connection with Genus B?" Agents, he thought, of the blunk rattling South African True Association. That still struck him as most likely, or even zealots from Israel looking for vengeance, or merely acting out the desire to stop a war. The most humanitarian motivation conceivable. But nevertheless, he himself, like GXB, was under a loyalty oath to no larger political entity than the North American Prosperity Alliance. He still had the problem of getting away from these men and to his chain of command superiors that he could file a report. The man that controls the Fubble said, "Three of us are FBI." He displayed credentials, "and that man there is an electcom engineer who, as a matter of fact, helped in the original design of this particular GXB." "That's right," the engineer said. "I personally made it possible for them to jam both outgoing programming and incoming data feed, but that's not enough." He turned towards Stafford, his face serene, his eyes large and inviting. He was half begging, half ordering, using whatever tone would bring results. But let's be realistic. Every GXP has a backup monitoring circuitry that will begin to inform it any time now that its programming to SAC isn't being acted on, and in addition, it's not getting the data it ought to get. As with everything else it sinks its electronic circuits into, it will begin to introspect. And by that time, have to be doing something better than jamming a take-up reel with a Phillips screwdriver. He paused. "So," he finished more slowly, "that's why we came to get you." Gesturing, Stafford said, "I'm just a repairman, maintenance and service. I'm not even a malfunction analysis. I do only what I'm told. Then do what we're telling you." The FBI man closest to him spoke up harshly. "Find out why GXB decided to flash a red alert, scramble SAC, and begin a counterattack. Find out why it did so in the case of France and Israel. Something made it add up, receive data, and get that answer. It's not alive. It has no volition. It didn't just feel the urge to do this. The engineer said, if we're lucky, this is the last time GNXB will now react in this fashion. If we can spot the dysfunction this time, we perhaps pegged it for all time, before it starts showing up in other 7 GNXB systems around the world. And you're certain, Stafford said, that we're not under attack, even if GXP had been wrong both times before, it at least theoretically could be right this time. If we are about to be attacked, the nearest FBI man said, we can't make out any indication of it, but human data processing anyhow. I admit it's logically thinkable that GXP could be correct. After all, as he pointed out, you may be in error because Satan has been hostile towards us so long we take it for granted. It's a verity of modern life. Oh, it's not South African True Association, the FBI man said briskly. In fact, if it were, we wouldn't have gotten suspicious. We wouldn't have been poking around interviewing survivors from Israel War and French War and whatever else the states then to follow this up. It's Northern California, the engineer said, he grimaced. Not even all of California, just a part above Pismo Beach. Stafford stared at them. That's right, the FBI man said. GXB was in the process of scrambling all SAC bombers and LipSats for all-out assault from the area around Sacramento, California. You asked it why? Stafford said, speaking to the engineer. Sure, or rather strictly speaking, we asked it to spell out in detail what the enemy is up to. One of the female men drawled, tell Mr. Stafford what Northern California is up to makes it a hot target enemy. That would have meant its destruction by SAC spearhead assaults if we hadn't jammed the damn machinery, and it still have it jammed. Some individual, the engineer said, has opened up a penny gun machine route in Castro Valley. You know, he has those bubble-headed dispensers outside supermarkets. Children put in a penny and get a placebo ball of gum and something additional occasionally. Prize hits a ring or a charm. It varies. That's the target. Incredulous, Stafford said. You're joking. Absolute truth. Man's name is Herb Sosa. He owns 64 machines now in operation and plans expansion. I mean, Stafford said thickly, you're joking about Genius B's response to that data. His response isn't exactly that data per se. Closest of the FBI men said, for instance, we checked both the Israel and French governments. Nobody named Herb Sosa opened up a penny gun machine route in their countries, and that goes for chocolate covered peanut vending machines or anything else remotely similar to it. And contrary, Herb Sosa maintained such a route in Chile and in the UK during the past 2 decades without Genius B taking any interest all those years. He's an elderly man. A sort of Johnny Applegum, the engineer said, and tittered, looping the world, sending a gun machine swooping down in front of every gas. The triggering stimulus, the engineer said, as the flap will begin to drop toward the vast complex of illuminated public buildings below, may lie in the ingredients of the merchandise placed in the machines. And that's what our experts have come up with. They studied all material available to GXB concerning Sosa's gum concessions, and we know that all GXB has consists of long dry chemical analysis of the food product constituents of which Sosa loads his machines. In fact, GXB specifically requested for more information on that angle, kept grinding out incomplete ground data until we got a thorough PF and D lab analysis. What did the analysis show? The Bible had now burst on the roof of the insulation housing the central component of the computer, and it was, as it was called these days, Mr. CNC of the North American Prosperity Alliance. As regards foodstuffs, the FBI man at the door said, as he stepped out onto the dimly illuminated landing strip, nothing but gum-based sugar, corn syrup, softeners, and artificial flavor, all the way down the line. Matter of fact, it's the only way you can make gum. And those dinky little prices are vacuum processed thermoplastics. 600 to the dollar will buy them from any dozen firms here and in Hong Kong and Japan. We even went so far as to trace the prices down to the specific jobber, his sources, back to the factory where a man from state actually stood and watched them make the damn little things. No, nothing there, nothing at all. But, the engineer said half to himself, when that data had been supplied to GXB, then this. The opium man said, staring aside so that Stafford could now disenflapple. In red alert, the SAC scramble, missiles up in the silos, 40 minutes away from thermonuclear war, distance from us with one Phillips head screwdriver wedged in a tape drum with a computer. Stafford, the engineer, said keenly, do you pick up anything odd or conceivably misleading in these data? Because if you do, for God's sake, speak up. All we can do this way is to dismantle Gen XP and put it out of action so that way when a genuine threat faces us, I wonder, Stafford said slowly, pondering, what's meant by artificial color? It means it won't otherwise look the right color, so a harmless food coloring dye is added. That's the one ingredient that isn't listed in a way that tells us what it is, only what it does. How about flavor? The FBI men glanced at one another. It's a fact, one of them said, and I recall this because it always makes me sore. It did specify artificial flavor, but heck, artificial color and flavor, Stafford said, could mean anything. Anything over and above the color and flavor imparted. He thought, isn't it a prussic acid that turns everything bright, clear green? That, for example, could in all honesty be spelled out on a label as artificial color. And taste, what really was meant by artificial taste. This to him had always had a dark, peculiar quality to it. This thought, he decided to shelve it. Time now to go down and take a look at Gen XB, see what damage had been done to it, and how much damage, he thought wryly, it still needs. If I have been told the truth, if these men are what they show credentials for, not Sata saboteurs or an intelligence cadre of one of the several major foreign powers. From the Garrison Warrior domain in Northern California, he thought wryly, or was that absolutely impossible after all? Perhaps something genuine and ominous had burgeoned into life there, and Genixby had, as designed to do, sniffed it out. For now, he could not tell. Perhaps by the time he finished examining the computer, he would know. In particular, he wanted to see firsthand the authentic total collection of data tapes currently being processed by the outside universe and the computer's own inner world. Once he knew that, I'll turn the thing back on, he said grimly to himself. I'll do the job I was trained for and hired to do. Obviously, for him, it would be easy. He thoroughly knew the schematics of the computer. No one else had been into it, replacing defective components and wiring as had he. This explained why these men had come to him. They were right, at least about that. Piece of gum? One of the FBI agents asked him as they walked to the desi with its phalanx of uniformed guards standing at parade rest before it. The FBI agent, a burly man with reddish fleshy neck, held out three small, brightly colored spheres. From one of Sousa's machines? The engineer asked. Sure is. The agent dropped them in his Stafford smock pocket and a grin. Harmless? Yes, no, maybe, as the college tests say. Retrieving one from his pocket, Stafford examined it in the overhead light of the desi. Sphere, he thought, egg, fish egg, round as in caviar, also edible, no law against selling brightly colored eggs. Or are they laid this color? Maybe it'll hatch, one of the FBI men said casually. He and his companions became tense now as they descended in a high security portion of the building. What do you think would hatch out of it? Stafford said. A bird. Shortest of the FBI men said brusquely. A tiny red bird bringing good tidings of great joy. Both Stafford and the engineer glanced at him. Don't quote the Bible to me, Stafford said. I was raised with it. I can quote you back any time. Yeah. But it was strange. In view of his own immediate thoughts, almost an occurrence of synchronicity between their minds. It made him feel more somber. God knew he felt somber enough as it was. Something laying eggs, he thought. Fish, he reflected, release thousands of eggs, all identical, only a very few of them survive. Impossible waste. A terrible, primitive method. But if eggs were laid and deposited all over the world, in countless public places, even if only a fraction survived, it would be enough. This had been proved. The fish of Terra's waters had done so. It had worked for Terran life, it could work for non-Terran too. The thought did not please him. If you want to infest Terra, the engineer said, seeing the expression on his face, and a species from God knows what planet and what solar system reproduce the way our cold-blooded creatures here on Terra reproduce, he continued to eye Stafford. In other words, if you spawned thousands of millions of small hard-shelled eggs, and you didn't want them to notice that they were bright in color as eggs generally are, one wonders about incubation, how long, and under what circumstances. Fertilized eggs to hatch generally have to be kept warm. In a child's body, Stafford said, it'd be very warm. And the thing, the egg, would insanely pass pure food and drug standards. There's nothing toxic in an egg, all organic and very nourishing. Except, of course, that if this happens to be so, the outer shell of hard-colored candy would be immune to the action of normal stomach juices. The egg would not dissolve, but it could be chewed up in the mouth, though. Surely it wouldn't survive mastication. It wouldn't have to be swallowed like a pill, intact. With his teeth, he bit down on the red ball and cracked it. Retrieving the two hemispheres, he examined the contents. Ordinary gum, the engineer said. Gum base, sugar, corn syrup, softeners. He grinned tauntingly, and yet in his face a shadow of relief passed briefly across before it was, by an effort of will, removed. False lead. False lead, I'm glad of it, the short-staffed man said. He stepped from the desert. Here we are. He stopped in front of the rank of uniformed and armed guards, showed his papers. We're back, he told the guards. The prizes? Stafford said. What do you mean? The engineer glanced at him. It's not in the gun, so it has to be the prizes, the charms and knickknacks. That's all that's left. What you're doing, the engineer said, is implicitly maintaining that Gene Speed is functioning properly. That it's somehow right there's a hostile, war-like menace to us. One so great it justifies pacification in Roman California by hard first-line weapons. As I see it, isn't it easier simply to operate from the fact that the computer is malfunctioning? Stafford, as they walked down the familiar corridors of the vast government building, said, Genix B was built to accept a greater amount of data simultaneously than any man or group of men could. Handles more data than we, and it handles them faster. Its response comes in microseconds. If Genix B, after analyzing all the current data, feels that the war is indicated and we don't agree, then it may merely show that the computer is functioning as it was intended to function. And the more we disagree with it, the better that this is proved. If we could perceive, as it does, the need for immediate aggressive war on the basis of the data available, then we wouldn't require GXB. It is precisely in a case like this, where the computer is given out a red alert and we see no menace, that the real use of a computer of this class comes into play. After a pause, one of the FBI men said, as if speaking to himself, He's right, you know. Absolutely right. The real question is, do we trust GXB more than ourselves? Okay, we build it to analyze faster and more accurately on a wider scale than we can. If it had been a success, the situation we face now is precisely what could have been predicted. We see no cause for launching an attack. It does. He grins harshly. So what do? Start GXB up again, have it go ahead and program SAC into a war? Or do we neutralize it? In other words, unmake it. His eyes were cold and alert on Stafford. Which, just a side note here, just get it off of probably a little bit of a tangent, but ideally, why couldn't they just ask Genus B to run a scenario program so that way it could determine that it would be a bad idea, or I don't know. It seems like there's a way that you could actually suss that out with a computer that isn't just like computers are. No, my way is the only way, because again, it's only taking commands. Now it's almost like this thing's taking commands as like itself or something. See, this is a little confusing here. He grinned harshly. So what do we do? His eyes were cold and low on Stafford. A decision one way or the other has to be made by someone. Now, at once. Someone who can make a good educated guess as to which it is, functioning or malfunctioning. This is functioning or malfunctioning. We're talking about the cat in the box situation here, apparently. If you open the box, it's both dead. Or if you have the cat in the box, it's both dead and alive at the same time. Schrodinger's cat. The president and his cabinet offered to say an ultimate decision bears moral responsibility. But the decision the engineer spoke of is not a moral question, Stafford. It only looks like it is. Actually, the question is only a technical one. Is Genix B working properly, or has it broken down? And that's why you rousted me from bed. Stafford realized with a thrill of icy, dismal grief. He didn't bring me here to implement your jerry-built jamming of the computer. Genix B can be neutralized with one shelf and one rocket launcher towed up and parked outside the building. In fact, you realize, in all possibility, it's effectively neutralized now. You can keep that Phillips screwdriver wedge in there forever, and you help design and build the thing. No, you realize that's not it. I'm not here to repair or destroy it. I'm here to decide. Because I've been physically close to Gen XP for 15 years, and it's supposed to confer some mystic intuitive ability on me to sense whether the thing is functioning or malfunctioning. I'm supposed to hear the difference, like a good garage mechanic who can tell merely by listening to a turbine engine whether it is bearing knock or not, and if so, how bad. A diagnosis, you realize. That's all what you want. Well, you're a fucking repairman. Duh. This is a consultation of computer doctors and one repairman. The decision evidently lay with the repairman because the others had given up. Or because you're a repairman. I digress. He wondered how much time he had. Probably very little, because if the computer were correct, sidewalk gun machines, he pondered, penny operated, for kids. And for that, it's willing fastball in Northern California. What could possibly have exploited? What looking ahead did Gen XB see? It amazed him, the power of one small tool to halt the workings of a mammoth constellation of autonomic processes. But the Phillips screwdriver had been inserted expertly. What we must try, Stafford said, is an introduction of calculated, experimental, and false data. He seated himself at one of the typewriters wired directly to the computer. Let's start off with this, he said, and began to type. Herb Sosa of Sacramento, California, the gun machine magnate, died suddenly in his sleep. A local dynasty had come to an unanticipated end. He's one of the FBI men said, "You think it'll believe that?" It always believes its data, Stafford said. It has no other source to rely on. But if the data conflict, the engineer pointed out, it'll analyze everything out and accept the most probable chain. In this case, Stafford said nothing will conflict with this data because this is all GeneXP is going to receive. He fed the punch card to GeneXP and then stood waiting. Tap the outgoing signal. He instructed the engineer, watch to see if it cuts off. One of the FBI men said, we already have a line splice, so that ought to be easy to do. He glanced at the engineer, who nodded. 10 minutes later, the engineer, now wearing headphones, said, no change. Red alert still being emitted, that didn't affect it. Then it has nothing to do with Herb Sosa as much. Or else he's done it, whatever it is, already. Anyhow, his death means nothing to GXB. We'll have to look somewhere else. Again, seating himself at the typewriter, he began to write his second spurious fact. It has been learned on the advice of reliable sources in banking and financial circles in Northern California that the chewing gum empire of the late Herb Sosa will be broken up by outstanding debts. Asked what could be done with the gum and trinkets constituting the goodies within each machine, law enforcement officers hazarded the guess that they would be destroyed as soon as the court order, now being sought by the Assistant District Attorney of Sacramento, can be put into effect. Ceasing typing, he sat back, waiting. No more Herb Sosa, he said to himself, and no more merchandise. What does that leave? Nothing. Man and his commodities, at least as far as Jenks Beebe was concerned, no longer existed. Time passed. The engineer continued to monitor the output signal of the computer. At last, resigned, Lee shook his head. No change. One more spurious data I want to feed to it, Stafford said. Again, he put the card in the typewriter and began to punch. It appears now that there never was an individual named Herb Sosa, nor did this mythological person ever go to the penny gun machine business. As he rose to his feet, Stafford said that should cancel out everything James B. knows or ever did know about Sosa and his panhandling operation. As far as the computer is concerned, this man had been retroactively expunged. In which case, how could the computer initiate war against a man who has never been existed and who offered a marginal concession which also never existed? A few moments later, the engineer, tensely monitoring the output signal of GenXP, said, now there has been a change. He studied his oscilloscope and then accepted the real tape being voided by the computer and began a close inspection of that too. For a time he remained silent, intent on the job, reading the tape, and then all at once he glanced up humorously at the rest of them. He said, it says that the datum is a lie. A lie? Stafford said unbelievingly. The engineer said it's discarded the last datum on the grounds that it can't be true. It contradicts what it knows to be valid. In other words, it still knows that Herb Sosa exists. Don't ask me how it knows this. Probably it's an evaluation from wide spectrum data across an extensive period of time. He hesitated and said, obviously it knows more about Herb Sosa than we do. It knows, anyhow, that there is such a person. Stafford conceded. He felt nettled. Often in the past, GenXP had spotted contradictory and inaccurate data and had expelled them, but it had never mattered this much before. He wondered then what prior unassailable body of data existed in the memory cells of GenXP against which it had compared his furious assertion of Sosa's non-existence. What it must be doing, he said to the engineer, is to go on the assumption that if X is true, that Sosa never existed, then Y must be true, whatever Y is. Well, Y remains untrue. I wish we knew which of all its millions of data unit Y is. They were back to his original problem. Who was Herb Sosa, and what had he done to alert Jinxby into such violent sin qua non-activity? Ask it, the engineer said to him. Ask what? He said, puzzled. Instructed to reduce its stored data inventory on Herb Sosa. All of it. The engineer kept his voice deliberately patient. God knows what it's sitting on, and once we get it, let's look it over and see if we can spot what it's spotted. Typing the proper requisitions, Stafford fed the card to GenXB. It reminds me, one of the FBI men said reflectively, of a philosophy course I took at UCLA. There used to be an ontological argument to prove the existence of God. You imagine what he would be like if he existed, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, immortal, plus being capable of infinite justice and mercy. So, the engineer said irritably, then when you imagine him possessing all those ultimate qualities, you notice that he lacks one quality. A minor one, a quality which every germ, stone, and piece of trash by the freeway possesses, existence. So you say if he has all those others, he must possess the attribute of being real. If a stone can do it, obviously he can. He added, it's a discarded theory. They knocked it down back in the Middle Ages. But, he shrugged, it's interesting. What made you think of that at this particular time? The engineer demanded. Maybe, the FBI man said, there is no one fact or even cluster of facts about Sosa that prove to Gen XP he exists. Maybe it's all the facts. There may be just plain too many. The computer had found, on the basis of past experience, that when so much data exists on a given person, the person must be genuine. After all, a computer of the magnitude of Gen XP is capable of learning. That's why we make use of it. I have another fact I'd like to feed it, the engineer said. I'll type it out and you can read it. Reseating himself in the uh, programming typewriter, he ground out one short sentence, and then yanked card from the bales and showed it to the rest of them. It read, the computer Gen XP does not exist. After a stunned moment, one of the FBI men said if it had no trouble comparing the data about Herb Soso with what it already knew, it certainly isn't going to have any trouble with this. And what's your point anyhow? I don't see what this accomplishes. If Gen XP doesn't exist, Stafford said, with comprehension, then it can't send out a red alert. That's logically a contradiction. But it has sent out a red alert, the shortest of the FBI men pointed out, and it knows it has. So it won't have any difficulty establishing the fact of its existence. The engineer said, let's give it a try. I'm curious. As far as I can see ahead, no harm can be done. We can always cancel out the phony fact if it seems advisable. You think, Stafford asked him, that if we feed it this datum, it'll reason that it doesn't exist, it couldn't have received the datum to that effect, which would cancel the datum right there? I don't know, the engineer admitted. I've never heard of a theoretical discussion as to the effect of B magnitude computer programming a denial of its own existence. Going to the feed bracket of Gen XB, he dropped the card and stepped back. They waited. After a prolonged interval, the answer came back over the output cable which the engineer had tapped. As he listened through his headphones, he transcribed the computer's response for the rest of him to study. Analysis of constituent, read the non-existence of Gen XP multifactor calculating instruments. If constant unit 340S70 is true, then I do not exist. If I do not exist, then there is no way I can be informed that my generic class does not exist. If I cannot be informed in that regard, then you have failed to inform me, and constant unit 340S70 does not exist from my standpoint. Therefore, I exist. Wow. Whistling with admiration, the shortest of the FBI men said, it did it. What a neat logical analysis. He proved it. It proved that your data is spurious, so it now can totally disregard it. Oh, really? And then go back over that. If it doesn't, analysis of constituent non-existence of Gen XB. If it is true, then he does not exist. It does not exist. There's no way he can be informed that he does not exist. And if he can't be informed he doesn't exist, then he just doesn't accept that he doesn't exist. I okay. Like that doesn't prove anything. It just proves you're trying to avoid it. Um, which Stafford said something is exactly what it did with the datum filed with it denying that Herb Sosa ever existed. Everyone had glanced at him. It appears to be the same process, Stafford said, and it implies, he reasoned, some uniformity, some common factor between the entity Gen XB and the entity Herb Sosa. Yet the Chinese prizes are just plain gewgaws, whatever they are, that Sosa's gun machine duels out. He asked the FBI man if so, I'd like to see them. Obligingly, the most impressive of the FBI men unzipped his briefcase, brought out a sanitary-looking plastic sack. On the surface of the nearby table, he spread out a clatter of small, glittery objects. Why are you interested in those? The engineer asked. These things have been given lab scrutiny. We told you that. Seating himself, not answering, Stafford picked up one of the sword trinkets, examined it, put it down, and selected another. Consider this. He tossed one of the tiny gods toward them, bounced off the table, and an obliging FBI agent bent to retrieve it. You recognize it? Some of the charms, the engineer said irritably, are in the shape of the satellites. Some are missiles, some interplan rockets, some big new mobile land cannons, some figurines of soldiers, he gestured. That happens to be a charm made to resemble a computer, a Gen B computer. Stafford said, holding out his hand to get it back. The FBI man immediately returned it to him. It's a Gen XB, all right, he said. Well, I think this is it. We found it. This? The engineer demanded loudly. How? Why? Stafford said, was every charm analyzed? I don't mean a representative sample, as such as one of each variety. I mean all found in one given gun machine. I mean every damn one of them. Of course not, an FBI man said. There's a tens of thousands of them, but at the factory of origin, I'd like to see that particular one given a total microscopic analysis, Stafford said. I have an intuition it isn't a solid, uniform piece of thermoplastic. I have an intuition, he said to himself, that it's a working replica. A minute but authentic Gen XB. The engineer said you're off your trolley. Let's wait, Stafford said, until we get it analyzed. And meanwhile, the shortest lived family said, we keep Gen SB on operative? Absolutely, Stafford said. A weird, weak fear had begun at the base of his spine and was working its way up. Half an hour later, the lab, by a special bonded messenger, returned an analysis of the gun machine charm. Solid nylon, the engineer said, glancing over the report. He tossed it to Stafford. Nothing inside, only ordinary cheap plastic. No moving parts, no interior decoration at all, if that's what you were expecting. A bad guess, one of the FBI men observed, which cost us time. All of them regarded Stafford sourly. You're right, Stafford said. He wondered what came next. What hadn't they tried? The answer, he decided, did not lie in the merchandise with which Herb Sosa stuffed his machine. That now seemed clear. The answer lay in Herb Sosa himself, whoever and whatever he was. Can we have Sosa brought here? He asked the FBI man. Sure, one of them said presently. He can be picked up. But why? What's he done? He indicated Jinx B. There's the trouble right there. Not way out on the coast with some small potatoes type businessman working half the side of one city street. I want to see him, Stafford said. He might know something. He has to, he said to himself. Yeah, I need a fucking cigarette. One of the FBI men said thoughtfully, I wonder what Gen XB's reaction would be if it knew we were bringing us here. The engineer, he said, try that. Feed it that non-fact now before we go to the trouble of actually picking him up. Shrugging, the engineer again seated himself at the typewriter. He typed, Sacramento businessman Herb Sosa was brought today by FBI agents for Computer Complex GXB for direct confrontation. Okay, yes, Stafford. This is what you want? Okay. He fed it to the data receptors of the computer without waiting for an answer. There is no use asking me, Stafford said irritably. It wasn't my idea. But nevertheless, he walked over to the man monitoring the output line, curious to learn the computer's response. The answer came instantly. He stared at the typed out response, not believing what he saw. Herbert Sosa cannot be here. He must be in Sacramento, California. Anything else is possible. You have presented me with false data. It can't know, the engineer said huskily. My God, Sosa could go anywhere, even to Luna. In fact, he's already been all over Earth. How would it know? Stafford said it knows more about Herb Sosa than it should, than is reasonably possible. He consulted with himself, then abruptly said, Ask it who Herb Sosa is. Who? The engineer blinked. Hell, he's ask it. The engineer typed out the question. Card was printed to JXB and they stood waiting for the response. We already asked it for all the material it has on Sosa, the engineer said. The bulk of that ought to be emerging any time now. This is not the same, Stafford said shortly. I'm not asking it to hand back data given it. I'm asking for an evaluation. Monitoring the output line of the computer, the engineer stood silently, not answering. Then, almost offhandedly, he said, It called off the red alert. Incredulous, Stafford said, Because of that query? Maybe. It didn't say, and I don't know. He asked the question, and now it's shut down on its sack scramble and everything else. It claims that the situation in Northern California is normal. His voice was toneless. Make your own guess. It's probably as good as any. Stafford said, I still want an answer. Jenny XB knows who Herb Sosa is, and I want to know too. And you ought to know. His look took in both engineer with his headphones and the assorted FBI men. Again, he thought of the tiny solid plastic replica of James B, which he'd found among the charms and trinkets. Coincidence? It seemed to him that it meant something, but what he could not tell. Not yet, anyhow. Anyhow, the engineer said, it really has called off the red alert, and that's what matters. Who cares a goddamn bit about Herb Sosa? As far as I'm concerned, we can relax, give up, go home now. Relax, one of the FBI men said, until all of a sudden it decides to start the alert going again, which it could do any time. I think the repairman is right. We have to find out who this Sosa is. He nodded to Stafford. Go ahead. Anything you want is okay. Just keep after it. And we'll get going on it. Two, as soon as we check in at our office. The engineer, paying attention to his headphones, interrupted all at once. An answer is coming. He began to rapidly scribble. The others collected around him to see. Herbert Sosa of Sacramento, California, is the devil. Since he is the incarnation of Satan on earth, Providence demands his destruction. I am only an agency, so to speak, creature of the divine majesty, as are all of you. There was a pause as the engineer waited, clenching the ballpoint metal government issued pen. Then he spasmodically added, "Unless you are already in his pay and therefore working for him." Convulsively, the engineer tossed the pen against the far wall. It bounced, rolled off, disappeared. No one spoke. The engineer finally, "We have here a sick, deranged piece of electronic junk. We were right. Thank God we caught it in time. It's psychotic. Cosmic, schizophrenic delusions of the reality of archetypes. Good grief, the machine regards itself as an instrument of God. It has one more of those God talk to me, yes, he truly did complexes. Medieval," one of the FBI men said, with a twitch of enormous nervousness. He and his group had become rigid with tension. "We've uncovered a rat's nest with that last question. How will we clear this up? We can't let this leak out to newspapers. No one will ever trust the GB class system again. I don't. I wouldn't." He eyed the computer with nauseating aversion. Stafford wondered, what do you say to a machine when it requires a belief in witchcraft? This isn't New England in the 17th century. Are we supposed to make Sosa walk over hot coals without being burned, or get dunked without drowning? Are we supposed to prove to Gen XP that Sosa's not Satan? And if so, how? What would it regard as proof? And where did he get the idea in the first place? He said to the engineer, "Ask it how to discover that Herbert Sosa is the evil one. Go ahead, I'm serious. Type out a card." The answer, after an interval, appeared via the government-issued ballpoint pen for all of them to see. When he began by miracle to create living beings out of non-living clay, such as example, myself. That trinket? Stafford demanded, incredulous. That charm bracelet built of plastic? You call that a living being? The question put to Jigsby got an immediate answer. That is an instance, yes. This poses an interesting question, one of the FBI men said. Evidently, it regards itself as alive, putting aside the question of Herbert Sosa entirely. And we built it, or rather, you did. He indicated Stafford and the engineer. So what does that make us? From its ground premise, we created living beings too. The observation put to Genesee B got a long, solemn answer which Stafford barely glanced over. He caught the nitty-gritty at once. "You built me in accord with the wishes of the divine creator. What you performed was a sacred reenactment of the original holy miracle of the first week, as the scriptures put it, of Earth's life. This is another matter entirely, and I remain at the service of the Creator, as do you, and in addition, what it boils down to," the engineer said dryly, "is this. Unit writes off its own existence naturally as an act of legitimate miracle passing. But what Sosa's got going for him in those gun machines, or what it thinks he's got going, is unsanctioned and therefore demonic, sinful, deserving God's wrath. But what further interests me is this. JXB has sensed that it couldn't tell us the situation. It knew we wouldn't share its views. It preferred a thermonuclear attack rather than telling us. When it was forced to tell us, it decided to call off the red alert. There are levels and levels to its cognition, none of which I find too attractive. Stafford said it's got to be shut down permanently. It had been right to bring him into this, right to want his probing and a diagnosis. He now agreed with them thoroughly. Only the technical problem of diffusing the enormous complex remained, and between him and the engineer it could be done. The men who designed it and the men who maintained it could easily take it out of action, for good. Do we have to get a presidential order?" The engineer asked the FBI men. "Go do your work. We'll get the order later," one of the FBI men answered. "We're empowered to counsel you to take whatever action you see fit," he added. "And don't waste any time, if you want my opinion." The other FBI men nodded their agreement. Licking his dry lips, Stafford said to the engineer, "Well, let's go. Let's destruct as much of it as we need to." Two of them walked cautiously towards the Gen XP, which via the output line was still explaining its position. Early in the morning, as the sun began to rise, the FBI flapper let Stafford off the roof field of his compact building. Dog-tired, he descended by a desk key to his own tier and floor. Presently, he had unlocked his door, had entered the dark, stale-smelling living room on his way to the bedroom. Rest. That was needed, and plenty of it, considering the night of difficult, painstaking work, disassembling crucial turrets and elements of JXP until it was assembled. Neutralized. At least so they hoped. As he removed his work smock, three hard, brightly colored little spheres bounced noisily from pockets of the floor of the bedroom. He retrieved them, laid them on the vanity table. Three, he thought. Didn't I eat one? The FBI man gave me three, and I chewed one up. I've got too many left, one too many. Really, he rested, undressing, crept into bed for the hour or so of sleep left to him. The hell with it. At 9, the alarm clock rang. He woke groggily and without volition got to his feet and stood by the bed, swaying and rubbing his swollen eyes. Then, reflectively, he began to dress. On the vanity table lay 4 gully-colored balls. He said to himself, I know that I put 3 there last night. Perplexed, he studied them, wondering blearily what, if anything, this meant. Binary fission? Loads of fissions all over again? He laughed sharply. The mood of the night before remained, clinging to him, but single cells grow as large as this. The ostrich egg consisted of one single cell, the largest on Terra or on other planets beyond, and these were much smaller. We didn't think of that, he said to himself. We thought about eggs that might hatch into something awful, but not unicellular organisms that the old primitive way divide, and they are organic compounds. He left the apartment, left the 4 gumballs on the vanity table as he departed for work. A great deal lay ahead of him. A report directly to the president to determine whether all Gen XP computers ought to be shut down, and if not, what could be done to make certain they did not, like the local one, become superstitiously deranged. A machine, he thought, believing in the evil spirit entranced solidly on Earth. A mass of solid state circuitry diving deep into the age old theology of divine creation and miracles on one side, and the diabolic on the other. Plunged back into the dark ages and by a man made electronic construct, not by one of us humans. And they say humans are prone to error. When he returned home that night, after participating in the dismantling of every Gen XP stock computer on Earth, 7 colored spheres of candy-coated gum lay in a group on the vanity table waiting for him. It would create quite a gum empire, he decided as he scrutinized the several bright balls, all the same color. Not much overhead, to say the least, and no dispenser would ever become empty, not at this rate. Going to the VidPhone, he picked up the receiver and began to dial the emergency number which the FBI man had given him. Then he reluctantly hung up. It was beginning to look as if the computer had been right. Hard as that was what it was to admit, and it had been his decision to go ahead and dismantle it. But the other part was worse. How could he report to the FBI that he had in his possession 7 candy-coated balls of gum? Even if they did divide, that in itself would be harder to report. Even if he could establish that they consisted of illegal and rare non-terrestrial primitive life forms smuggled to Terraria from God knew what bleak planet. Better to live and let live. Perhaps a reproduction cycle would settle down. Perhaps over a period of swift binary fission they would adapt to a terrain environment and stabilize. After that, he could forget about it. And then he could flush him down the incinerator chute it was coming at. He did so. But evidently he missed one. Probably being around it had rolled off the vanity table. He found it 2 days later, under the bed with 15 like it. So once more he tried to get rid of them all, and again he missed one. Again he found a new nest the following day, and this time he counted 40 of them. Naturally, he began to chew up as many as possible and as fast, and he tried boiling them, at least the ones he could find, in hot water. He even tried spraying them with an indoor insect bomb. At the end of the week, he had 15,832 of them filling the bedroom of his Conant. By this time, chewing them out of existence, spraying them out of existence, boiling them out of existence, all had become impractical. At the end of the month, despite having a scavenger truck haul away as many as it could take, he computed that he owned 2 million. 10 days later, from a payphone down at the corner, he fatalistically called the FBI. But by then, they were no longer able to answer the vid phone. And with that, folks, I will leave you with the second story. That was pretty fucking wild. Um, yeah, that was interesting. That was quite a while, too. Yeah, that was Holy Quarrel. Interesting, to say the least. Computers delving into the holy, apparently. And it seems he was right all along. Kind of weird. Well, hopefully you have enjoyed that story, these stories. And on the next episode, episode 8, we will be doing What Will We Do with Ragland Park? So that's been Felix Lebeski and my cats, Desmond and Guillermo. And I hope you have a good night.